Genesis 47. You are about to watch a man destroy the economy by driving wealth inequality to the extremes. And because it's the Bible, death is involved. Joseph went and told Pharaoh, "My father and brothers, with their flocks and herds and everything they own, have come from the land of Canaan and are now in Goshen." He chose 5 of his brothers and presented them before Pharaoh. "Pharaoh, I just invited 70-some people to come live here forever. You're cool with that, right?" Which 5 did he choose? It's so weird how the Bible goes into elaborate detail about the weirdest things and then leaves out useful information all the time. We just spent all that time in the last chapter learning all those brothers' names. Now we're not even using them. I want to know which 5. Remember, at the end of the previous chapter, Joseph coached his family and told them all to say they're shepherds because Egyptians hate shepherds. Therefore, Pharaoh will let them remain in Goshen, which is the goal here. Pharaoh asked the brothers, "What is your occupation?" "Your servants are shepherds," they replied to Pharaoh, "just as our fathers were." They also said to him, "We have come to live here for a while, because the famine is severe in Canaan, and your servants' flocks have no pasture. So now please let your servants settle in Goshen." Everything is going smoothly. This is highly unusual for the Bible. They're saying everything just as they rehearsed. Joseph's got to feel like a children's theater director. Just say the lines. Just say what I taught you. You got this. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Your father and your brothers have come to you, and the land of Egypt is before you. Settle your father and your brothers in the best part of the land. Let them live in Goshen. And if you know of any among them with special ability, put them in charge of my own livestock." Whoa! Not only did that work, Pharaoh's giving them extra special responsibilities already. Then Joseph brought his father Jacob in and presented him before Pharaoh. After Jacob blessed Pharaoh, Pharaoh asked him, "How old are you?" That is the right question. Pharaoh could have asked Jacob to talk about his son, to share some stories, to ask about his trip. Instead, he took one look at the guy and said, "How the hell are you not dead yet?" And Jacob said to Pharaoh, "The years of my pilgrimage are 130. My years have been few and difficult, and they do not equal the years of the pilgrimage of my fathers." Then Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from his presence. 130 years old, and he says, "My years have been few." Because 130 is young in a book where we've seen people live to be over 900. Interesting thing about that blessing, though, is how rare it is. We've only seen that ritual happen 2 other times in the Bible so far, where someone who's not God bestows a blessing on someone. Once was when Isaac blessed Jacob accidentally because he thought Jacob was Esau. The other was when Rebekah's mother and brother Laban blessed her when she decided to run off with Isaac in chapter 24. It kind of makes sense that Isaac and Jacob have that power. They're kind of main characters in this story. But who the hell gave Laban that authority? He's a biblical nobody, relatively speaking. So Joseph settled his father and his brothers in Egypt and gave them property in the best part of the land, the district of Ramses, as Pharaoh directed. Joseph also provided his father and his brothers and all his father's household with food, according to the number of their children. Aw, they all have fancy homes and food now, because during a famine, rich people will always find a way to do just fine. Also, the district of Ramses? That's pretty much a synonym for Goshen, but it's weird, because Ramses wasn't a name that came into use until hundreds of years later. So this is technically an anachronism, but more likely these stories weren't written down until long after the events in question, supposedly. But it is weird. It's almost like reading Shakespeare and seeing Romeo pick up the phone and call Juliet. Like, there's something not quite right about that. There was no food, however, in the whole region because the famine was severe. Both Egypt and Canaan wasted away because of the famine. Joseph collected all the money that was to be found in Egypt and Canaan in payment for the grain they were buying, and he brought it to Pharaoh's palace. When the money of the people of Egypt and Canaan was gone, all Egypt came to Joseph and said, "Give us food. Why should we die before your eyes? Our money is all gone." There are some parts of the Bible that have no relevance to our modern lives. Then there are passages like this that perfectly encapsulate wealth inequality. The poor people gave whatever money they had to the rich for food, and the people at the top did just fine. But because Pharaoh is clearly a right-wing Republican, there is no attempt to make sure that everyone has a job or that everyone has universal basic income so they have money to spend even though jobs are hard to come by, or that everyone's gonna have food on the table. The people want a revolution because the biblical economy is broken. That would have been a much better Bible if they just overthrew Pharaoh, kicked out Joseph's family, and redistributed the money that the rich people hoarded. The Bernie Bible. I love it already. So what's Joseph gonna do? Give away the food? Find a way to spread the money around? Turn his back on everyone and just let them die? Then bring your livestock, said Joseph. I will sell you food in exchange for your livestock since your money is gone. So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and he gave them food in exchange for their horses, their sheep and goats, their cattle and donkeys. And he brought them through that year with food in exchange for all their livestock. That is the worst solution. That's like telling poor people who are going hungry today that you'll give them money, but only if they give you their cars and homes. Like you're taking away the tools they need to make more money. What a horrible, short-term, idiotic idea. I mean, maybe it works for a little bit, but then what? I mean, they'll still need food, but they'll be in a worse position. When that year was over, they came to him the following year and said, "We cannot hide from our Lord the fact that since our money is gone and our livestock belongs to you, there is nothing left for our Lord except our bodies and our land. Why should we perish before your eyes? We and our land as well. Buy us and our land in exchange for food, and we with our land will be in bondage to Pharaoh. Give us seed so that we may live and not die, and that the land may not become desolate." This got dark quickly. They have no food. They have no livestock to earn money to buy food. Joseph is a horrible leader who crippled the economy, so now the people are forced to give up their land and themselves. They have nothing left to offer. Any decent human being would say, no, you keep your land, you stay independent. Here is some food to tide us all over. Let's work out a reasonable path forward. But of course, Joseph's not gonna do that. So Joseph bought all the land in Egypt for Pharaoh. The Egyptians, one and all, sold their fields because the famine was too severe for them. The land became Pharaoh's, and Joseph reduced the people to servitude from one end of Egypt to the other. However, he did not buy the land of the priests because they received a regular allotment from Pharaoh and had food enough from the allotment Pharaoh gave them. That is why they did not sell their land. Oh my God, the parallels don't stop. The government screwed over the people, but the religious leaders did just fine because the government gave them special treatment. And let's not mince words here. Joseph did not buy all the land. He took it. He extorted it. He stole it. This was not a fair deal. How does Joseph not see the obvious solution here? With the priests, he gives them a regular dose of cash and a regular dose of food, and they're doing fine despite the famine. Why not just do that with the rest of the people? Joseph said to the people, "Now that I have bought you and your land today for Pharaoh, here is seed for you, so you can plant the ground. But when the crop comes in, give a fifth of it to Pharaoh. The other 4/5 you may keep as seed for the fields, and as food for yourselves and your households and your children." Joseph is always finding a way to be a bigger dick. I took everything you have, but here's a seed. Plant it, grow it, buy yourself something nice. Oh, by the way, I'm gonna need a cut of whatever you grow. How big? How about 20%? That's a totally fair number I just made up and is also twice as large as a tithe. Where are they gonna plant the seeds? On the land that they no longer own? They are quite literally sharecroppers now. Let's do it. Revolution, right now. "You have saved our lives," they said. "May we find favor in the eyes of our Lord. We will be in bondage to Pharaoh." Great. The Republicans ruined their lives, and moderate Democrats just rolled over and accepted it. Joseph didn't save their lives. He ruined their lives, then dangled the bare minimum in front of them in exchange for everything else they had. So Joseph established it as a law concerning land in Egypt, still in force today, that a fifth of the produce belongs to Pharaoh. It was only the land of the priests that did not become Pharaoh's. Surprise! The government created a law that ripped off the people, but not the priests. Never the priests. Now the Israelites settled in Egypt in the region of Goshen. They acquired property there and were fruitful and increased greatly in number. Well, I'm glad Joseph's family, after moving to the suburbs, are doing just fine. Who would have guessed? Jacob lived in Egypt 17 years, and the years of his life were 147. When the time drew near for Israel to die, he called for his son Joseph and said to him, "If I have found favor in your eyes, put your hand under my thigh and promise that you will show me kindness and faithfulness. Do not bury me in Egypt, but when I rest with my fathers, carry me out of Egypt and bury me where they are buried." "I will do as you say," he said. Nothing like a creepy 147-year-old man telling someone to grope him. "Cut my balls and tell me you will carry my corpse back home." Would have been a much better Bible verse. You know, some family traditions do not need to be passed down. But it looks like everything will come full circle. Jacob will die and eventually return to Canaan. By the way, when he dies, he will become the 22nd oldest person in the Bible. Methuselah, of course, is at the top of the list, but Jacob made a good run. "Swear to me," he said. Then Joseph swore to him, and Israel worshipped as he leaned on the top of his staff. That was just the same thing as the previous verses, but with swearing. Joseph hoarded food, ripped off the people he ruled over until he took everything they had, passed a law making sure people would give Pharaoh 20% of all the produce they grew, and made sure his people did just fine while everyone else suffered. The only people with any land at this point are Joseph and Pharaoh, who are the government, Joseph's family, and religious leaders. The Bible totally predicted Donald Trump.